Baby Bridget by Charles H. Hinton. Narrated by Janelle Smith. Copyright 2013. Felicia Hall was not the most virtuous woman who ever lived, and never claimed to be. She had her faults, a few lovers without names, a few pregnancies, a couple of abortions, and at one time a few too many drugs. Virtue was something she had learned to live without, and in her world she had no need for it. Bridget Hall was the world's most virtuous baby that ever lived. She was born pure. There was not an ounce of tainted, unclean substance about her. Virtue was something that Bridget would always have. Bridget did not inherit these qualities simply because she was a baby, and all babies are born virtuous. Make no mistake, Bridget was the world's most virtuous baby because she was Felicia's one and only baby, and all there ever would be. After taking her morning bath, Felicia put on her robe and went to check on Bridget. When she entered Bridget's bedroom, she noticed that she had left the window open and several flies had flown in. She waved her hand, and the flies buzzed away, some exiting through the window from whence they had come. Felicia walked over to Bridget's crib. She looked down at her and saw her smiling with small teeth that would soon fill her gums. "How is my little baby?" Felicia said, puckering her lips. "Does Bridget know what day it is? Does she? No, she doesn't. Well, it's her birthday, and Mommy's going to take her out to get her picture taken, and we're going to tell everyone we see it's your birthday and that you are 1 year old." She reached down and pulled Bridget gently from her crib. Bridget smiled. It warmed Felicia's heart to see her baby smile. "Now you sit here, Bridget, while Mommy takes out your pink ruffled dress. Okay, sweetheart?" She sat down on the apartment's shabby lime green carpet and then walked over to the closet. "Here it is, baby. Now come on so Mommy can give you a bath." She turned and saw Bridget smiling up at her. Felicia stared down at her for a moment, her eyes filled with absolute joy. She loved to see her baby smile. It was a sign that she was healthy. "Come on, baby. Come to Mommy." Felicia squatted and extended her arms. "Well, that's okay, baby. You don't have to walk all the way across this room if you don't want to." She walked over to her child and picked her up. "Now, let's get you cleaned up." The bath water was lukewarm. It was perfect for a baby. Felicia placed Bridget gently inside the tub. Bridget splashed water and gurgled while her mother bathed her. Felicia realized she had forgotten to put baby soap in the water. "Play with this, Bridget, while Mommy gets out your soap." She placed a blue plastic ring inside the tub and made her way to the cupboard, where she bent and grabbed the baby soap. When she stood up, she saw a brown-skinned woman staring back at her from the other side of the mirror. She had dark, ratty hair that ran down her thin, sunken cheeks. The bottom of her thick lip was so chapped that it had a deep crack in the center. Felicia could not believe she was looking at her own reflection. She looked as if she was 21, going on 30, if not 40. She wiped a small, thin hand down her face and sighed. "God," she thought, "I look terrible. I look like a mother that's going to be on welfare for a long time." She reached inside the medicine cabinet, pulled out her makeup, and then went to work on her face, applying makeup until she was satisfied. Felicia took a step back and liked what she saw. Lord knows, she had seen better days, but considering all that she had been through, she thought it best not to look a gift horse in the mouth. It was amazing what a little makeup could do for a gal. She had transformed herself from the living dead to mostly alive, and mostly alive beats the living dead any day. "My God!" "Baby drowns in tub." "What have I done?" "Mother is to blame." "Please, God, no!" "Baby killer hangs herself in Jamestown psycho ward." Felicia could not move. She was afraid to turn around. She was afraid of the bathtub. Afraid that... Gathering all the strength she could muster, Felicia turned and saw Bridget, her virtuous Bridget, smiling at her with those little baby teeth. "Oh, my baby," she sighed. "Mommy loves you more than anything in the whole wide world. Mommy will never do anything to hurt you. Does Mommy's little baby know that?" Bridget smiled at her mother. "Now, let's get you dressed so we can go and have your pictures taken." Felicia gently lifted her out from the tub. Bridget waved her arms and kicked her small chubby legs and giggled. The Minnesota sun was a giant hot orange in the sky. It had broken away from a few clouds and was now ready to do business. Felicia walked out of Community Apartments with Bridget pressed against her shoulder. She was wrapped from head to toe in a blue blanket. It was better for her to be a little hot than be eaten alive by those Minnesota mosquitoes. A group of flies, perhaps the very same flies that had invaded Bridget's bedroom earlier this day, buzzed around Felicia's head. She fanned them away as she made her way to the car. It was blazing hot inside the car. Felicia's hands could hardly stand to touch the steering wheel. "I'll have it cool in here real fast, Bridget," Felicia said, staring at Bridget through the rearview mirror. She was sitting still in her car seat, covered with the blanket. In a moment, she would be sleeping. Felicia turned on the air conditioner, then drove slowly out of the parking lot, the car's chrome bumpers a hot twinkle beneath the sunlight. When she turned on to Highway 10, her blue Skylark was approaching 50 miles per hour and climbing. The Skylark was more than 10 years old, but still ran well. In the 5 or 6 years she had owned it, it had only given her a few minor problems. Bridget and the Skylark were the only good things she had ever received from Bridget's father. She hated to even think of Mooney and all of his jive-ass bullshit. But somehow, without warning, he'd blink on inside her head, and her mind would replay that awful day when he left her for good. "I gots to go, Felicia. There's things I gots to do," Mooney had screamed. "What about our baby, Mooney? Who's gonna do for her?" "What do you mean, our baby? What makes you think it's mine?" They were standing in the kitchen. Felicia, a frail, brown-skinned woman. Mooney, a broad-shouldered beast of a man, with skin as dark as a skillet. "It's yours, Mooney. I ain't been with nobody but you." That's what all ya hoes say." He sized her up, his eyes moving from her face, down to her breast, her crotch, and then back to her stomach, marking it. He stared at the small, growing bump with contempt. "No, that's what all you motherfuckers say when you want to get out of responsibilities." Felicia stepped to him. It was the look he had given her that made her furious. He had sized her like a 2-cent whore with rabies. Suddenly, his large hand slammed across her face, knocking her across the kitchen floor and into a rack of dishes. Felicia fell to the floor, pulling the dishes down with her. The dishes hit the dirty wooden floor, then smashed into 1,000 pieces. "You're going to be the one cleaning that shit up, bitch," Mooney yelled, towering over her. He raised a big foot and smashed it down on her stomach. "And you're going to clean up this mess too, ho." He raised his foot again, but this time Felicia was not going to wait for him to deliver another blow. He was trying to kill her baby. The realization caused Felicia to snap. Mooney hammered his foot down a second time, but Felicia was ready. She pushed herself away, and Mooney's foot landed against the hard floor, buckling his knee. He screamed and hobbled, and before he could straighten out, Felicia was on her feet with the steak knife pressed against his throat. "Nigga, if you ever put your hands on me or try to hurt my baby again, you'll be sleeping in dirt," Felicia screamed. She stared into his eyes. "You're in charge now," his eyes told her. They also told her that he had been smoking that green shit. His eyes were red and squinty. "Do you understand me, nigga? I will kill you." "Yeah, man, I understand you. Now get that off my neck before you cut me." Felicia pulled the knife away and took 2 steps backwards. She noticed that she had drawn blood. She kept the knife extended. If he lunged towards her, he would be his own murderer. He stared at her for a long time, his eyes red from dope and rage, until finally he said, "I'm gone." And the motherfucker was gone. Forever. And Felicia cried. She cried like she had never cried before. She wept until the day Bridget was born. When Bridget was born, Felicia's weeping stopped. Her crying did not taper with time. The crying did not slow month after month and year after year. No, it stopped right then and there. Felicia traded her tears for her baby and never cried again. Highway 10 was a lonely stretch of road that ran as far as the eyes could see, and then some. On both sides of the road were open fields that seemed to stretch to the ends of the earth. From time to time, the fields were separated by long dirt driveways that led up to tattered farmhouses, some living and some dead. All in all, Highway 10 was a long, deserted strip. A man and woman with teeth as big as playing cards smiled at Felicia as she approached. They were plasty, phony figures with pale skin. The giant writing on the billboard, just below the man and woman's bellies, read, "Smile! Holiday Mall is just a mile!" Felicia stared at the man and woman's big smiles until they rolled out of sight. How fake, she thought. Fake, fake, fake. She merged right, leaving Highway 10 behind her. Bridget was awake now. Felicia saw her small arms and legs working beneath the blanket. "We will be at the mall soon, baby, okay?" She turned on to 8th Street. In the distance, she could see the mall's big flag, waving its stars and stripes. It was Saturday, and the mall was full. Felicia was about to make a third pass around the parking lot when a parking space finally opened up. It was near the entrance. She pulled in quickly. It only took her a moment to retrieve Bridget's stroller and fasten her down. There was no need to remove the blanket. The mall would be air-conditioned to the maximum, and Felicia did not want her baby freezing to death. An elderly white couple dressed in matching sweatsuits smiled warmly when Felicia entered the mall. Felicia nodded. She had no desire to smile at white folk. White folk were all phonies as far as she was concerned. They were as phony as their white billboards that cluttered the highways and byways of America when the white government came to take her brothers and her away from her mother, destroying their family. They were smiling. They were smiling when they took her brothers and her into separate rooms and told them that their mother was not fit to take care of them. They were told that their mother had allowed them to become dirty, unclean children. In the end, they were all placed in foster homes, in the care of sympathizing white folks who believed that Christianity was the remedy for all Negro children. As far as Felicia was concerned, taking black children away from their families, no matter how strongly the government felt it was just, was nothing more than a form of legalized slavery. White folk had no business in charge of black folks' children, and for these reasons, Felicia never had love for white folks and their white smiles. White folk had it all. They had the lawyers, they had the doctors, they had the land, they had the money, they. Richmond's photography was practically empty, save for a customer and two very young-looking employees. The store was small and neat. At the entrance, to her right, stood a portrait studio, and further down, occupying more than 2/3 of the store, was a 1-hour photo lab. A heavy-set black girl with short black hair was working the portrait studio. She hardly smiled when Felicia entered. "I'll be right back, miss," the girl said in a deep, dry voice. "I have to go to the bathroom. You can put your baby in the seat if you want, but make sure you watch it, 'cause I ain't 'sponsible if your baby fall out." The girl was headed into the mall when she suddenly stopped and turned. Her face was now a horrid, twisted ball. The girl gawked and then walked out into the mall. Felicia walked over to the platform that staged little children before a large camera. On top of the platform sat a small modified car seat lined with a furry gray blanket. Behind the platform, pulled down like giant colorful window shades, were various backdrops. Blue clouds, rainbows, the yellow brick road. The yellow bricks were winding and twisting up to the land of Oz. There was even a clown for young kids who were not afraid of its pale face, big eyes, red lips, and large teeth. "Come on, baby. "Let's get you seated," Felicia said, taking Bridget out of her stroller. She placed her gently in front of the camera. Bridget was a perfect fit inside the studio's car seat. She would remove Bridget from her blanket and fix Bridget's hair when the time was right. Bridget worked her arms and legs beneath the blanket. Felicia smiled. When the girl returned, her attitude seemed much better. Felicia supposed it was because she had relieved herself. "Well, I guess we should take the blanket off your child before we begin," the girl said, curling the corners of her mouth. She was cute when she smiled. The girl walked over and removed the blanket with one quick jerk. Her eyes swelled as she slammed her plump hands over her mouth. Her hands, as large as they were, could not stifle her scream. It came out in a long-winded shriek that sounded almost inhuman. The big girl pinwheeled backwards into the camera, taking it down with her. The light-sensitive film inside the camera turned black the moment it fell out. The girl fainted, and her world turned black, too. The customer and two young-looking employees came running. No one had a clue as to what was happening, but whatever it was very serious. The customer, a balding man dressed in a white shirt and tie, blew his lunch when he arrived on the scene. He slumped over and watched as his half-digested food poured from his nose and mouth in wet, acidic chunks. Something was in the air, and now people were coming to have a look-see. The two young photo lab workers stood staring with their mouths on hinges. They stared with unbelieving eyes, without uttering a single word. They stood there staring at a child that had been dead for a very long time. Bridget's eyes were small black marbles inside a sunken skull. Her nose was a sharp white bone that protruded out from rotten flesh. Her upper lip had rotted off, giving her an everlasting smile. The smell was horrid. They would later compare it to the smell of maggot-infested pork floating in sour milk. People were starting to gather. They watched in horror as a rainbow-color fly bounced from side to side in Bridget's mouth before finding its way out. It circled the room twice before disappearing into the mall. The crowd watched as Bridget's stomach and chest began to swell and roll over. For a moment, it looked as though she was breathing. Suddenly, the fly's maggots poured from Bridget's mouth and down the platform where they squirmed. They looked like foul clumps of rice, twisting and churning. The crowd began to scream and moan. "Ain't my baby beautiful?" Felicia whispered. "Ain't she just the cutest little thing you ever seen? And clean? She's clean because I bathe her. I bathe her all the time. That way no one will ever take her away from me." Bridget smiled at her mommy. Felicia smiled as a warm hand closed around her shoulder. She turned and saw the hand belonged to a husky security guard dressed in a brown uniform. His other hand was perched on his holster that carried a big gun inside. Felicia looked past the guard and saw a little girl standing among the crowd that had gathered. The girl was dressed in a pink ruffled dress holding a floating balloon. The writing on the balloon, written in big bold letters, read, "Happy Birthday." Felicia's eyes swelled with tears. She closed her eyes, and the tears streamed down her face. She wailed as the guard gently pulled her away from her baby. The time had come for her to leave her beautiful baby Bridget. Baby Bridget was written by Charles H. Hinton and narrated by Janelle Smith. Copyright 2013.